from the shadows of the National Palace
to the muddy trenches of politics. This is the Pigsty, the pig pen of politics with Camerano.
Welcome once again to this space full of filth. And I'm not talking about the mud at my feet, but about everything that's happening politically in this country. And I have to tell you, this is the pigsty, the cesspool of politics. I'm Camerano, your pig and messenger of distrust. And today I bring you a succulent menu that will make some of you jump with joy and others with discomfort. Listen up, my pigs. Rumor has it that Uncle Sam is bored and sharpening his teeth to go against Palenque. That's right. Washington pulls out the knife against the fourth transformation. Let's get started. My little piggies, get your act together, because what's happening in the political swamp is worthy of a Turkish drama, but with the smell of sulfur and adulterated tequila. What used to be a flirtation between Uncle Sam and the so-called fourth transformation is over. The romance has rotted, and now Washington has put on the gloves. Not boxing gloves, but butcher's gloves. The show, which some call geopolitics and I call settling scores, has a clear route from Washington against Palenque. This administration isn't having it easy, with Americans hot on their heels and pressuring the lady in charge at the National Palace. The Americans, those who never forget, are opening the old thick files that the former president, the Macuspana donkey Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, kept under the mattress. And the goal is simple: to trip up, or rather to put in the shadows anyone who dares to challenge their rules in the neighborhood. Hold on, because things are about to get messy. Political analysts say the goal is to dismantle the power network and policies backing sanctioned regimes. A route that has been called from Washington against Palenque, in reference to the founder of the movement, and which today puts Scheinbaum's administration to the test. The offensive is not merely rhetorical, it materializes in the resurgence of old corruption cases and in strict monitoring of Mexico's international alliances, particularly with Cuba and Venezuela. This strategy, driven with renewed energy in the context of the current United States political climate, seeks to exploit the political and financial vulnerabilities of the ruling coalition in Mexico. Do you remember 2006? Yes, that year when the Fourth Transformation didn't win and swore that the election was stolen from them. Turns out the Drug Enforcement Administration and American intelligence hounds didn't forget the rumors of bribery and illegal millions of pesos movements. Now, out of nowhere, bam, they arrest Manfred Mauricio Quintanilla in the United States. This guy is the key to reopening Operation Polanco. That investigation says that the Beltran-Leyva cartel put their dirty money into the main guy's campaign. Listen up. Quintanilla is a partner of Mauricio Soto Caballero, and he in turn is connected to Nicolas Molinero, the famous Nico, the driver who used to drive that modest white Tsuru, when old Guango was head of government of what was then the Federal District, now Mexico City, confidant and shoulder to cry on for the founder of the Fourth Transformation for decades. The thing is that Molinero's cousin is Rafael Marin Molinero, the current head of customs in this government of the Servientific. The timing of this arrest, right at this tense moment, sends an unmistakable signal. The old unresolved issues of Obradorism are being used as leverage. The shady detail is that Marin, a man from the inner circle, is in charge of the gateway through which everything enters and leaves Mexico. That is money, weapons, drugs, smuggling, while his cousin appears in a narco-financing file from 2006. It's no coincidence. The Americans are saying, we know where it stinks and we know who protects the pigsty. This isn't just pressure, it's a threat of customs suffocation. Several political analysts say corruption in the Fourth Transformation hasn't ended, just changed its jersey. And I completely agree. The impunity guaranteed from the top has allowed scandals that would have caused resignations in the past to now be handled with a complicit smile. The fact that the National Customs Association of Mexico, a key point for oversight and by national trade, has been criticized for alleged nests of corruption and complicity with importing companies highlights the institutional vulnerability that Washington seems determined to exploit. Here comes the part where brave honesty goes down the drain. An alleged document from United States Security points directly at the favored businessman, Jack Lanzmanas. The second front opened with the leak of warnings about this businessman and his consortium, Cosmos Corporation, known in the media as the Food Cartel. The document, allegedly sent by a United States security agency, accuses Lanzmanas of assisting an organized crime group and maintaining a chain of corruption that touches sensitive areas within the Mexican state apparatus. The Mexican Social Security Institute, National Institute of Migration, Pemex, and Federal Electricity Commission. This man dominates contracts in hospitals, prisons, and migrant centers. He happily switched from Peña Nieto's Institutional Revolutionary Party to the Fourth Transformation and increased his profits. In the first 3 years of the transformation, his contracts went from 5 billion to 18 billion pesos. To top it all off, leaked documents talk about kleptocracy, money laundering, and logistical support for organized crime. Despite an investigation started by the Financial Intelligence Unit in 2021 for tax evasion and money laundering, the consortium continued operating at the highest level. The Lanzmanas connection therefore not only exposes alleged internal corruption, but also the continuation of questionable business practices despite the movement's rhetoric of not stealing. The investigation was discarded, and the businessman continued dining with palace officials. Americans note that corruption in Mexico extends beyond presidential terms. The Fourth Transformation took it in and fattened it up like a pig for Christmas. But the main event, my friends, is the geopolitical conflict. Mexico has stubbornly insisted on being the lifeline for two of the regimes most hated by Washington, Nicolás Maduro's Venezuela and Díaz-Canel's Cuba. How? Through oil, the Pemex subsidiary Gasolinas del Bienestar, as many know, sends an average of 20,000 barrels of crude oil per day to Cuba. That's $600 million a year in aid, and of course, there's also the business of Cuban doctors, which is another injection of fresh cash for the island. These shipments, which have remained steady under Claudia Sheinbaum, are considered by Washington to be a violation of international agreements. In fact, Pemex has been subject to United States sanctions for its crude oil shipments to the island. The challenge is direct. When Uncle Sam seized a Venezuelan oil tanker that was headed to Cuba, it was an act of war in the neighborhood. They say they're cutting off funding to terrorist groups, meaning the dictatorships, so the Mexican administration has a hot potato on its hands. If it maintains oil solidarity, it becomes a direct accomplice for Washington, and that comes at a high price with sanctions and more legal pressure. So Chetches has to be very careful and weigh her options. The Fourth Transformation assumed a new Mexican government would make Americans forget. How naive! Washington doesn't alter its policy, just its methods. The current offensive isn't about treaties or tariffs, it's a surgical war, one of intelligence and criminal justice. Critical opinion sees this policy as a strategic mistake, since warnings have been made about the Mexico-Cuba-Venezuela triangle, criticizing that Mexico is also tying itself to mechanisms and regimes that are about to collapse, instead of prioritizing the recovery of its strategic and commercial relationship with the United States. For his part, the Secretary of State in the Trump administration, Marco Rubio, and other Washington hawks have been clear. They see Cuba as the source of evil and believe that Maduro's fall is the strategic step to destabilize the Cuban regime. On this board, the Fourth Transformation claims a Latin American progressive and non-interventionist stance, denouncing what they call Cuba's blockade, which they say doesn't exist. What there is an embargo, which is not the same. But anyway, I can talk to you about that on another occasion if you want. However, this choice of solidarity comes at a cost in the bilateral relationship by turning Mexico into an actor that, according to the United States perspective, facilitates the survival of regimes that challenge its regional hegemony. This complex strategy links the fight against drug trafficking with anti-corruption efforts and sanction geopolitics. Uncle Sam's voice is putting on the table the possibility that dormant files or new investigations could become active legal proceedings that undermine political stability in Mexico. The message is, if you ally yourself with our enemies, Cuba, Venezuela, and if you keep the same corrupt people, Lanzmanas, Molinedo, and company, in key positions, we are going to strangle you. Strangulation begins with the neck of political trust, reopening 2006 files and exposing hypocrisy in the anti-corruption fight. The servant of welfare is in a dead end if she continues down the path of ideological solidarity with dictatorial regimes. She puts 80% of Mexico's trade at risk. If she remains honest and removes the corrupt members identified by the United States, she will trigger an even bigger internal conflict, causing the fourth transformation movement to collapse. The way the Mexican government navigates this war of files, while at the same time dealing with the persistent cancer of internal corruption. It will define not only the governability of the coming years, but also the authority and autonomy of Mexico in the face of pressure from its northern neighbor. My little piggies, the political pigsty is flooding. Scheinbaum's administration has no room to maneuver. Either they align themselves with the reality of North America, or they get ready for Washington to kick them so hard they'll end up in Palenque with that old man, straight into oblivion. Sovereignty is important, yes, but the American's checkbook carries more weight. Ha ha ha! And there you have it, my pigs. The reality is this mud pit is only beginning to move and settle. Washington has already laid its cards on the table, and in the National Palace they're shaking like jelly. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to the pigsty. We'll be here with the rake in hand and our boots on, ready to sniff out and narrate every stinky detail of this war between Uncle Sam and the Fourth Deformation. By the way, I've already sent Berman on vacation, so I'll be in charge of this filthy channel, at least until the first week of January. That useless guy sends you hugs and best wishes for the coming year. I'll read your comments, and remember that in this pigsty, the only law is the law of the filthiest. See you at the next scandal. Goodbye.
This is the Pigsty. The pig pen of politics with Camerano.